How did a notification weighing only a few kilobytes bypass the most sophisticated biological defense system on Earth during the ongoing assassination attempt on your focus and willpower? To understand how, let's take a look at this 3D model of the prefrontal cortex that we put together just 12 hours ago. The human decision-making process is split across two critical functional levels: the primal, emotional terrace of the limbic system and the analytical, subterranean concourse of the prefrontal cortex. Your concentration has to clear rigorous neural security gates just to access the command center, the area that holds your long-term goals, your career ambitions, and your very identity. So, how did this digital intruder bypass these evolutionary checkpoints? Well, it didn't use force. It simply checked in as a harmless, routine hotel guest of the mind. Our modern environment is full of biological blind spots, including zero screening at the sensory front doors of our consciousness. When this signal finally hits the main neural checkpoint, charges and guns blazing, carrying a high-affinity payload of pure dopamine, it begs the question, what if it isn't stopped? Had the inhibitory neurons failed at these critical synapses, your logic wouldn't have made it to the next morning. Walking freely through these deep-seated passages, this molecular assassin would have almost certainly wiped out your entire capacity for rational thought. This is part 1, the digital intruder behind the plan. To understand what happened at 2 a.m. last night, you first need to understand the architecture of the attack. Beneath the ordinary surface of a glass screen, something was building. Roughly 10 milliseconds before you reached for your phone, a programmed manifesto was sent to your synapses, calling for an immediate surge of craving. This subterranean room, the prefrontal cortex, was the exact location where your focus and future were gathered. Effectively, the entire executive leadership of your personality was seated together in a single confined space. Meanwhile, the assassin was already making his move. The digital intruder doesn't look like a threat. It isn't carrying a weapon you'd recognize. It's a 15-second video of a golden retriever, a split screen of someone cutting kinetic sand, or a headline about a celebrity you don't even like. To the naked eye, it is utterly ordinary. It is harmless. It is mundane. It has no criminal record in your conscious mind. It has no history of violence against your schedule. But beneath this ordinary surface, a tactical strike is being coordinated. This is the friendly assassin. It doesn't need to break down the front door when you are the one who invited it in. The attack begins the moment the screen illuminates. The light leaves the display at nearly 300,000 kilometers per second. It hits the retina, the first security perimeter of the human eye. But the retina is not a guard, it is a sensor. It doesn't check for intent. It simply translates photons into electrical impulses and hands them off to the optic nerve. The signal is now inside the wire. It is moving through the high-speed tunnels of your nervous system, heading directly for the center of the command structure. The first major checkpoint is the thalamus. In our 3D model, think of the thalamus as the main lobby of the Hilton. It is the central relay station. Usually, the thalamus is a strict gatekeeper. It filters out the noise of the world so you can focus on what matters. It decides which guests get an elevator pass and which guests are sent back to the street. But this intruder is carrying a forged ID. It is disguised as novelty. It vibrates with a specific frequency that the thalamus is evolutionarily hardwired to prioritize. The intruder is not flagged. It is not stopped. It is not even questioned. It walks right through the lobby and heads for the stairs. As the signal descends from the thalamus, it enters the deeper subterranean levels of the brain. It is heading for the nucleus accumbens, the heart of the reward system. This is the ballroom. This is where the dopamine is stored in vast, pressurized tanks, waiting for a reason to be released. The assassin walks down these neural corridors with total confidence. He knows exactly where the sensors are. He knows the security detail is distracted by the fatigue of a long day. Now let's look at the state of the target. It is 11:52 p.m. The room is pitch black. The physical body is exhausted. The heart rate is dropping. The lungs are shifting into the deep, rhythmic breathing of pre-sleep. Melatonin, the brain's natural sedative, has already begun to flood the system, trying to lock the doors for the night. Everything in the biological record says the building should be empty. But in the victim's hand, the phone is glowing like a beacon. The screen is the only source of light in this dark universe. The victim thinks they are in control. They think they are just winding down for 5 minutes before closing their eyes. They have no idea that the subterranean vault of their brain is about to be breached. Why didn't the internal alarms go off? The answer is the guest exemption loophole. Because you are the one who picked up the device, because you are the one who provided the biometric thumbprint or the face scan, the brain assumes the incoming data is authorized. The security detail at the magnetometers, your willpower, sees the device and assumes the screening has already happened at the front door. It's a catastrophic failure of logic. The brain trusts the hand, and the hand is holding the assassin. The signal reaches the final gate just outside the reward center. This is where the prefrontal cortex, the CEO of your brain, resides. This is the part of you that knows you have a meeting at 8 a.m. This is the part that knows you are tired. This is the American leadership of your personality. But at midnight, the CEO is exhausted. The security detail is understaffed. The prefrontal cortex tries to raise a weak protest. It reminds you that you need rest. It suggests putting the phone on the nightstand. But the assassin is already in the room. At approximately 11:58 p.m., the trigger is pulled. The intruder reaches the nucleus accumbens and initiates a release sequence. A small, concentrated burst of dopamine is discharged into the synapse. It's a hit. It's a tiny spark of pleasure, a microscopic aha moment. It's not enough to satisfy you, but it's more than enough to hook you. The chemical reaction is immediate. The logic gates are bypassed. The exit doors are locked. The 5 minutes you promised yourself has just been overridden by a neural coup d'etat. He didn't need to force his way in. He traveled from the App Store and checked in as a regular guest. He moved through the lobby, descended the stairs, and engaged the target while the guards were looking the other way. You didn't even notice the breach until the first hour had already disappeared. The time bomb is ticking, the dopamine is flowing, and the victim is still staring at the screen, completely unaware that their executive leadership has just been incapacitated. This leads us to the critical question: how did we get here? What are the specific loopholes in our biological hardware that allow a piece of software to execute a perfect assassination of our time? To understand the failure, we have to look at the security loopholes that have been left wide open for centuries. This brings us to part 3, the structural flaws of the human mind. What went wrong? This leads us to part 4, the neural security loopholes. If the human brain is the most highly protected building on Earth, how did a simple notification manage to bring the entire executive leadership to its knees? To understand the failure, we have to look at the structural flaws in our biological hardware. These are the blind spots that Silicon Valley engineers have spent billions of dollars to exploit. Loophole 1, the instinct exemption. The most fundamental flaw in your entire security plan is this: the brain is evolutionarily hardwired to prioritize novelty over long-term safety. For 99% of human history, a sudden sound or a flash of light meant a predator or a food source. Our ancestors who ignored these signals didn't survive to pass on their genes. Consequently, your internal security detail is programmed to grant immediate, high-priority access to anything that is new. When your phone vibrates, the thalamus doesn't ask if the content is useful. It simply sees a new guest and waves them through the VIP entrance. It is a biological bypass that renders your willpower completely irrelevant. Loophole 2, no data screening at check-in. A high-security facility, every bag is X-rayed. But in the human brain, we accept sensory data without an initial filter. Think back to the Hilton. The guest's luggage went completely unchecked for over 24 hours. Your brain does the same thing with information. When you see a clickbait headline or an auto-playing video, the data enters your system before your logical mind can even begin to evaluate it. By the time you realize the content is garbage, the signal is already standing in the middle of the ballroom. The breach has already happened. You are reacting to the intruder after he has already pulled the trigger. Loophole 3, the manifesto that arrived too late. This is a matter of pure physics and neurotransmission speed. In our analysis of the Hilton attack, the assassin's brother notified the police, but the warning came 10 minutes too late to act upon. A dopamine spike happens in the nucleus accumbens in roughly 50 milliseconds. However, the prefrontal cortex, the part of you that can say no, takes significantly longer to reach full processing power. It's like a security team that receives a warning call while the suspect is already standing over the target. By the time your reasoning kicks in and tells you to put the phone away, the chemical reward has already been delivered. The manifesto of your regret arrives exactly 10 minutes after the attack has already succeeded. Loophole 4, legal weapon purchases with no red flags. This is how the assassin stays off the grid. Cole Thomas Allen purchased his shotgun legally because nothing in the system marked him as a threat. Similarly, the weapons used by modern apps are designed to look perfectly legal to your biology. They use a specific frequency of light, exactly 450 nanometers. This is blue light. To your eyes, this light is a legal signal that indicates daytime. It passes every background check. But once inside, this specific frequency acts like a tactical strike against your melatonin production. It's a weapon of mass distraction that is purchased and used within the legal limits of your biological hardware. Nothing in your DNA marks this light as a threat until your sleep cycle is already incapacitated. Loophole 5. A public hotel hosting a private event. The Washington Hilton was a public space, which created a massive security vulnerability. Your brain is currently facing the same crisis. You are trying to host a private event, your rest, your deep work, or your sleep, in a public hotel that is being bombarded by thousands of guests from the internet. Every app, every email, and every ad is a guest trying to descend into the subterranean ballroom of your mind. Plus, in a densely confined neural space, even a single shotgun blast of dopamine is devastating. There is nowhere for your focus to escape. But what if the breach was permanent? This brings us to part 5, the constitutional crisis of the mind. If the assassin pushes past the agents and enters the ballroom, he isn't just taking out one target. He is incapacitating the entire executive cabinet. If the dopamine assassin successfully occupies your prefrontal cortex for hours every night, the United States of you faces a collapse unlike anything in your history. Let's look at the what-if scenario. If the attack succeeds and you lose those critical hours of sleep, your brain enters a state of microsleep defense. In this state, your neurons begin to misfire to save energy. The distance from your logic to your impulse becomes shorter. This visual representation shows the critical distance shrinking. Your reaction time slows down. Your ability to detect future threats is compromised. You are essentially operating a high-performance machine with a compromised security detail. Had the attack on April 25th succeeded, the government would have been incapacitated. When the dopamine attack succeeds, your executive function is incapacitated. You lose the ability to plan. You lose the ability to regulate emotion. You become a subterranean room with nowhere for the crowd to escape, trapped in a loop of controlled fire from the screen. Even in the brief seconds before you finally pass out from exhaustion, the casualty potential to your goals and your mental health is unthinkable. But if this was just one night, what happens when the attack is repeated? If the first attempt was last night, and the second attempt is tonight, we have to map out the basic positions of the recurring threat. We have the podium, your bed, we have the audience, your thoughts, and we have the shooter, the device in your hand. Most people complain that they can't focus, but let's take a look from the brain's point of view. First of all, we have these tree lines. Your habits that obstruct your view of the danger. You can't see the threat because you are sandwiched between the trees of convenience and the cover of boredom. When ready, the algorithm squeezes the trigger, firing 3 bullets of content in a controlled manner. One hits your curiosity, one hits your ego, and the last one hits your fear. In total, around 7 to 8 bullets of dopamine are fired per minute as you scroll. This is well beyond the limits of your biological hardware to process. Interestingly, this bullet would have missed you if your head had been turned toward a book or a conversation. But as long as you are looking at the podium, the threat remains low to the ground. Surrounded by agents who are struggling to move you away from the scene, we have to fast forward the event. We have to identify the person of interest before the shot is fired. But how do we build a ballroom that is militarily top secret? How do we build a White House for our focus that is currently under construction? To survive the 3rd, 4th, and 5th assassination attempts on our time, we need a military-grade defense. We need to stop looking at the guest and start looking at the luggage. This leads us to the final part, the defense protocol. Protecting the executive leadership of the United States requires a multi-layered defense strategy. Your brain, your personal command center, deserves nothing less. We call this digital defense. It is the process of building a militarily top-secret perimeter around your cognitive ballroom. To stop the assassin, you cannot rely on the guards who are already exhausted at midnight. You must act before the notification clears the sensory gate. This means establishing a hard exclusion zone. Leave the device outside the sleeping quarters. Disable the magnetometers of your social apps. Turn off the visual lures of the legal blue light that tricks your internal clock. By the time you feel the dopamine hit, the breach has already occurred. You must neutralize the signal before it ever reaches the optic nerve. We take this structural vulnerability seriously. This video wasn't generated by an automated algorithm designed to keep you scrolling in a loop. It was researched by human investigators and animated by hand, frame by frame, at a tactical 15 frames per second. We provide these technical breakdowns to help you understand the architecture of your own mind. We are fighting the same battle for focus and willpower that you are every single night. But the system only improves when we identify the loopholes. Take a look at your screen time reports from yesterday. It is a digital record of every successful breach. When was the last time you felt your entire American leadership of focus was assassinated by a simple 30-second clip? Let me know what you think in the comment section. We make original videos from scratch, animated by humans, to help you reclaim your subterranean command center.